We talked about Punk joining UFC. There was another story this week of a former wrestler, or soon-to-be former wrestler, I'm sure. If he's smart, he'll get out, who is going on to bigger things outside of wrestling, and that is Dave Batista. Dave Batista has officially, there's been rumors about this, but he was officially cast, the announcement was made this week, as a key henchman in the new James Bond movie that's coming out next November. The film is going to be called Spectre. It comes out in theaters November 6th, 2015. Christoph Waltz will be playing the lead villain in the film, possibly the character of Blofeld, who was played by the great Donald Pleasance in one of the earlier Bond films, You Only Live Twice. The image of the evil villain sitting there applauding world domination while stroking his cat. And no, that's not a euphemism for masturbation. He literally would sit there stroking his cat. That came from the Blofeld character. And if you don't know who Donald Pleasance is, he played Dr. Loomis in the Halloween films and was fucking awesome at it. But what makes this relevant to this podcast is that Batista has been cast as the villain's lead henchman named Hinks. Hinks is his name. I think this is fantastic because I think Batista is actually a really good actor, and he's only scratching the surface of what he could be. I was one of the earliest people on a wrestling podcast to praise his acting work after he did that Wrong Side of Town movie with Rob Van Dam. I thought he was very good in House of the Rising Sun, another indie movie he did when he left WWE, and he was the star. He was the lead star of that movie, unlike the RVD movie where it was more of like a bit role. He was the star of this one. I thought his acting in there was actually pretty impressive, and he was hilarious as Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy. And as much as people praised him for that, I still think he is underrated as an actor. Plus, I'm a James Bond fan. So put the two of them together, and this news makes me very happy. Daniel Craig is coming back as Bond for the third time, I believe. No, is it fourth time? I think it's the fourth Bond film for him. That's Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and then this one. So this would be number 4. I love Casino Royale. The opening action sequence at the construction site in that movie I thought was incredible. I loved that film. Quantum of Solace, not as good, but not a bad movie. Skyfall, I was not a fan. I was left disappointed. Now, I have not watched Skyfall since I saw it in the theater the first time, so maybe I'd be kinder to it if I watched it again. But I'm a big fan of Daniel Craig as Bond. He's my second favorite Bond behind Roger Moore. I know it's blasphemy not to mention Sean Connery when you say best Bonds, but I can't really comment on Sean Connery as Bond because I never saw, believe it or not, a full Sean Connery Bond film. And I do count myself a big James Bond fan. I've never seen a full film with him in it as Bond. I mean, that that must be what it's like to grow up with the current wrestling product and think John Cena is the best wrestler in the world and getting death threats from people for not mentioning Bret Hart or Steve Austin because I didn't grow up on those guys or something like that. You know, my mother was a fan of Roger Moore as James Bond, had all the tapes. So that's what I grew up with. I grew up watching VHS tapes, you know, The Man with the Golden Gun, which was my favorite Roger Moore Bond film. That was the first time I ever realized you could be born with a third nipple. That was quite the shocking development to me as a young kid. Moonraker, The Spy Who Loved Me, Live and Let Die, A View to a Kill, which I think was the last Bond film that Roger Moore did. And one of my favorite titles for a movie of all time, Octopussy. I love how here in the States we're so sensitive to using bad language on television and certain types of sexual situations. You know, it's not as open as it is, say, in Europe, where stuff like that or a naked woman on TV is like no big deal. You know, because they're actually mature about those things, unlike most Americans. So they're constantly editing stuff so it's appropriate to air here on TV. And, I mean, the radio, oh my God, I mean, it's unbearable to listen to terrestrial radio anymore. Satellite radio is the way to go. They play the same 5 fucking songs on the radio over and over again all day long, and the songs usually suck. But they'll take a good song on the radio that happens to have bad language or, like, drug references or something like that, and they'll edit the songs to shit so it sounds like like all these like start and stops. You can't hear what the guy is saying. It's like, why even play the damn song if you're going to chop it up like that? You know, they chop it up so much you can't even understand what they're saying. So anyway, the point of all this is, I always loved it when they would air Octopussy on TV because there was no way around it. It's the name of the movie. You can't edit it. You can't ignore it. It's not an offensive word. It's Octopussy. It's a completely different word. Only it isn't, and you couldn't help but laugh. So they would have to air it that way, and you just know they hated doing that. But I would look at the listings and I would see, oh, Octopussy is on tonight. And I would always laugh. But yeah, I'm a Roger Moore guy. There's a t-shirt idea for our store. So, good for Big Dave. I'm happy for the guy. This is a big, big role for him. He's had an incredible year, if you think about it. He did the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is Marvel. That took off. He goes from getting himself a recurring role in a Marvel franchise, a movie that made like $1 billion worldwide, to being in the next Bond film. And then in between, he's been working on that Kickboxer remake that he's going to be in next year as well. It's a really big deal for him. And if I'm him, especially after how my last run went, I'm leaving WWE in my rearview mirror, and I'm making a name for myself in Hollywood. And the rumor was that when he came back to WWE, whatever agreement he reached with Triple H, he signed a 2-year contract. So as far as I know, he's still technically under contract to WWE, I think for like another year. But even so, I would leave that in my rearview mirror. There must be some kind of clause or an understanding that if his film career takes off, it takes precedent over his wrestling career, because the good thing about landing big roles like this is that you can call your own shots. He doesn't need WWE. WWE needs him. And Christoph Waltz is fucking amazing. Inglourious Bastards. I mean, come on. You should watch that movie anyway just to see a bunch of Nazis get killed. Any movie where Nazis are blown up to bits as graphically as humanly possible is automatically a great movie in my book. That never gets old. But watch it for the acting that Christoph Waltz does. I just... Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. He's in this movie. Batista's in this movie. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Good for Big Dave. I'm happy for him.